Just off the coastline of the metropolis of Singapore lies a gem unknown to many, the Sungei Buloh Wetland Reserve. It's not just a home to locals and photographers, but also a haven to a huge diversity of wildlife. Here in Sungei Buloh, the rich biodiversity can be easily seen. An escape to where milky storks roam freely, and bats, well, they sleep in peace. In this fast-paced city of Singapore, little things are often left unnoticed. Luckily for us, we have Jean-Pierre, a wildlife photographer, here today to share with us some of the wonderful unknown nature here in Sungei Buloh.
I come to the reserve every weekend, generally on Saturday morning and or Sunday afternoon, to enjoy mostly the fresh air, but also to look at the wildlife. First of all, this is a wildlife reserve. It's not a zoo, so there are no fence. Wild animals are free to come and go as they wish. So, bearing that in mind, and knowing that there may be crocodile, monitor lizard, and some snakes as well, just be mindful and sticking to the actual pathway should be enough to avoid any confrontation. So during the September to January, February is the migratory period. So that's when normally birds from northern Europe and Russia stop over around Singapore on their way to Australia and other further countries. Outside of the migratory period, you've got lots of heron, milk and stork as well, hornbill, as we saw this morning, and of course, quite a few species of eagles. The best time to see them for all the types of species are early in the morning, late afternoon, and around the receding or the incoming tide. I personally think that it's very important to maintain and preserve such nature, environment and green species around our city. Not only to give a chance to the resident to go out, enjoy the outdoor, but also from an environmental point of view. It helps regulate and circulate the air and the oxygen in the city, and also gives the wildlife some anchor point to not only live but also prosper, as we've seen with some of our resident species.
Although wildlife thrives in the area of Sungei Buloh, this isn't the only place where wildlife is found. Right here at the heart of Singapore lies the Central Catchment Nature Reserve, a home to at least 218 species of birds and 50 different mammals. The Nature Reserve hosts many joggers every weekend, and living amongst them are another group of wonderful native creatures. The Singapore freshwater crab. There are a total of 4 different unique species, of which 3 can only be found right here in Singapore. With a national population of almost 5.6 million citizens, deforestation is necessary to cater to its rapidly growing population. It is estimated that less than 3% of Singapore's original forest now remains, and for any actions, there are always consequences and a price to pay. Here with us today is Subaraj Rajathurai, a veteran wildlife consultant, to speak on behalf of the animals and the threats they face.
Our rainforest here protects some amazing biodiversity of plants and animals, many of which are not found anywhere else in Singapore. So it's very, very valuable to retain these areas, and you need enough space for some of the animals to have enough territory and you have enough gene pool. First of all, with the central nature reserves, not only Central Catchment Nature Reserve, but Bukit Timah Nature Reserve. So two reserves that used to be one. The first encroachment took place 40 years ago when they cut the BKE right through the middle. Many times we divide this space into many fragments because of reservoirs and roads. And if you have a small patch of forest that's not connected to anywhere else, whatever is in here will eventually start breeding among themselves, which is a problem because they will not have the genetics to continue a viable population long term. It's a very short-term equation before they eventually come to a point where they become sterile and then they will die out. There was an animal called the banded leaf monkey, which is now called the Raffles banded langur. And the last population in Singapore was actually at Bukit Timah. By the 1960s, it was down to about 5 individuals. By the 1970s, it was down to 2 individuals. And by 1987, the last one got killed by dogs. Fortunately, just before it died out, we found another population in where we are now, this part of the Central Catchment Nature Reserve. And it numbers 60 today, still a very dangerous thing if they're isolated. But the population at Bukit Timah is completely gone because of genetic isolation. We tend to stray into areas that are out of bounds, meant to be breeding and roosting areas, and pushing these sensitive animals out to the edges where they get run over. Like the Samba deer at BKE. That was because they cleared all his feeding ground at Mandai Lake Road at Track 15. We feel that nature is a part of everything in Singapore that balances everything. You take away one part of the balance and the whole thing collapses. And it's very important that everybody understand that whether you are a nature person or not, we are all directly or indirectly connected. Until Singapore has a better understanding, mindset, a higher outlook on things where you got everything balanced, including nature, we will have to keep working at it.
As Singapore continues to prosper in some areas, others are left behind with an uncertain future. You may be able to see these animals now, but will they still be here for your children to see?